want it to be successful?
I think there's a great point there. You know, like I said, a few years ago, I didn't have a book. And the first couple of books that I self-published, like a few folks here who have 1 or 2 books that they've self-published, I didn't really know what to expect. And maybe I naively thought that the books would take off and start selling on their own, or somehow it would catch on, and I had no idea. Now that I've done a few of these, and I kind of know what is likely to happen when I put a book out, I'm a little bit more, you know, I think aware that you really do have to market the books. And I have these books that are now available that I know will sell if I can find the right vehicle, the right price, the right place to find readers. And I think, just like you said, Christine, it's sort of a cycle. And I think what I'm sensing now is this kind of balance of, okay, I'm doing a lot of marketing of the books and helping out other writers, and that in turn is a kind of marketing as well, doing interviews with authors on a weekly basis. But at some point, I could see myself going back to kind of minimizing a lot of the outwardly promoting stuff and marketing stuff, and moving back to trying to crank out a novel per year. And like I said, I was reading this thing just last night that I had written a few years ago, and I kind of envied the energy with which I wrote it. And so I think it is a cycle. I think we figure out what works, and if it's a little unhealthy that you're doing too much marketing, you pull back on that and you put the focus back on the writing or whatever seems to work best.
Stacy, in working with this kind of marketing, how much does it count in the marketing for a book to have won awards?
I think it's huge. I think that it's something to hang your hat on, and you can point to the award, and it's somebody else acknowledging your work, and that creates interest if it's presented to the right group of readers who are interested in it, I think.
How do you find those readers?
Well, a lot of them I found online. So let's talk a little bit about that. Since June of this year, I don't mind being completely transparent with the numbers of books sold. I think it's helpful for folks to know. Since June of this year, I've sold a little over 2,500 copies of the Colorado Sequence, and just slightly over 1,500 copies of Claws. Those are my 2 sort of front-leading suspense novels. That's about 4,000 books sold since June of this year, and it's almost been entirely through online sales of ebooks and e-readers. Now, I have to recognize the context of giving this conversation or talking about this. You know, we're in an independent bookstore, and so if you're buying hardcovers or paperback books, you know, always support your local independent bookstores. They're locally owned. The money goes back into your community. And I think what I found is the independent bookstores and bookstores in general are where the grassroots campaign begins. Again, I've sold about 4,000 books, mostly as ebooks, since this summer.
Why are they buying ebooks instead of paperback books or hardbacks?
It has a lot to do, I've got several different reasons why I think it's worked the way that it has. One is price point. A paperback version of the Colorado Sequence purchased through Lulu or what have you is going to retail for about 15 or 16 bucks. If I get it into a store, it's about $20, and that price point is just way too high for an unknown author. Now, if I'm James Patterson or Stephen King or Nicholas Sparks, where they have that built-in name recognition, folks will spend 15 or 20 or even $30 for a book by them. But for the rest of us who are largely unknown beyond our family and friends and local communities, you really need to be thinking about, well, how do I reach readers in the Netherlands or in California or Alaska? And I think having a competitive price point is really key. One of the things about digital e-readers and books sold online is there isn't the cost of paper, there isn't the cost of ink, there isn't the cost of distributing the book via shipping and gasoline and that kind of thing. And so there's no reason why you can't sell the book very inexpensively. When I first put the books online as digital books earlier this summer, I was selling them for about $2 per book, $1.99 per book. I've since reduced the price down to about $1 per book. So it's about the price of, the way a newspaper used to be a few years ago.
For a whole book?
For the whole book. And so this raises the question of, am I doing this for the money, or am I doing this to build a readership? And I think that's something you all have to take into account, is thinking about, well, do I want to, try and sell a book that's going to, make tens of thousands of dollars, or do I want to try to build a readership? And what I recognize is where I'm at this point is building a readership and name recognition. I've got some good novels. They're not, Nobel Prize winning novels or National Book Award winning novels. They're good suspense thriller novels, and the key is to get it to the readers at a price that they'll say, well, this sounds interesting, I'll click on it and buy it. There are a few digital readers, and I should preface this by saying I was at the SEBA trade show. Again, I want to kind of remember where I'm at when I'm giving this discussion. SEBA is the Southern Independent Booksellers Alliance. They have a trade show every year, which is worth checking out. At the SEBA trade show, which was in Greenville, South Carolina just a few weeks ago, basically what happens at the SEBA trade show is you have this interesting dynamic between publishers and booksellers. I've never been to another conference like it in my life. Most conferences I've been to, like the North Carolina Writers Network or the World Mystery Convention or what have you, it's really about fans connecting with authors. That's the central purpose for a lot of conferences. There's some networking, there's some connecting with people in the industry. But at the SEBA trade show, the Southern Independent Booksellers Alliance trade show, there are very few authors there. I think there were maybe a few dozen authors there, and there was something like 180 bookstores represented. There was close to, I want to say close to 200 publishers were represented, from small presses, university presses, all the way up to HarperCollins and Random House. And what happens is they had this exhibitor hall, which is enormous. It's in a big ballroom at the convention center, and all of the publishers set up booths. So for any authors out there who want to get face time with publishers, both small and large, I encourage you to check out the SEBA trade show. Next year it's going to be in Florida, which is not convenient. But they move it around from year to year. And the publishers all set up tables at this conference. And like I said, there was 200 publishers there. I've never seen that convergence of that many publishers with booksellers. So the booksellers really go there to see what publishers are presenting for their upcoming year, to place some orders, to hear what's hot, what's interesting, what changes are coming down from the major publishers. One of the major changes that everybody was talking about at SEBA is ebooks, and how the independent bookstores are going to connect and capitalize on ebooks. Very quickly, HarperCollins, which is a major publisher, publishes Ron Rash's Serena, in fact. Ron Rash is a local North Carolina author, has been doing very well recently. HarperCollins had a rack, kind of like this rack over here that says New and Noteworthy, where you could spin it around. And on the rack they had little postcards of the book cover with the back jacket description. It's a little lightweight 3.5-inch by 5-inch postcard. On the front is the front cover of a book, on the back is the back cover. And there was a code on the back of the card whereby you could then download the book onto your iPhone or BlackBerry Storm or onto your computer at home. It was the first sign, the absolute first sign that I had seen that the publishers were thinking about independent bookstores and bookstores in general and how to get them into the game of digital books. So basically you could walk into a store, you see your favorite book in a postcard, pick up the thing and say, okay, I want to buy this and support my local bookstore. Well, in addition to supporting your local bookstore, the publishers are selling these things dirt cheap to the stores. I think the price on the postcards was $1 to the store. So then the store can buy the postcard and can set the retail price at whatever price they want. And so they can undersell Amazon, they can undersell the chain stores, and actually sell ebooks less expensively than a lot of online retailers.
This is what you're talking about?
Something like that, but it would have...
Okay, you've got this on the back, and you're saying there would be a code here.
Yes, and you could go to the retailer's site, the HarperCollins site, or wherever they're hosting the book, punch in the code, and then you'd have the book that you could download onto your computer.
So my publisher could redo this
Essentially.
with a code.
They'd have to have the technology in place to do it. Again, HarperCollins is the first that I've seen of anybody doing this, but I think it's a trend that it's the elephant in the room, and I've hesitated to talk too much about it at independent bookstores because I want to support independent bookstores, and I haven't seen how they have been able to connect with this new technology to capitalize on it. And this is the first sign that I've seen that, okay, here's a vehicle that they can actually use to compete with the chain stores and online retailers. Ebooks have they have exploded in the past 3 years, and it's what everybody was talking about at SEBA. And it's interesting because the booksellers are kind of talking about it with a sense of skepticism and fear and how do we capitalize on this, and nobody's going to read books on computers, you know. And the fact remains, I just think that it's here, and to not talk about it is irresponsible. What was neat to see was at SEBA's trade show, the Southern Independent Booksellers Alliance trade show, they really were thinking about ways to pull this into the market. Most of my books, the 4,000 books I've sold since June, have been sold on the Kindle, Amazon's e-reader, their Kindle, which is like a 6x8 digital reader that folks buy. There have been over 1 million Kindle units sold since they've been on the market for about 2 years now. That's 1 million folks who have bought these e-readers, which retail for about anywhere from $250 to $400, that are the biggest die-hard book enthusiasts on the planet. You imagine somebody who spends $400 on a digital reader.
Stacy, excuse me, they now have the Kindle too.
Yeah, there's a Kindle 2, there's a Kindle DX. Barnes & Noble, again, I don't want to get struck by lightning talking about these big, you know, corporate companies.
Something called Nook.
They have a Nook that has just come out, which I think is actually healthy because it'll compete with Amazon. What I'd like to see is a third-party e-reader that would be sold as well.
What's a Nook?
The Nook is Barnes & Noble's digital reader, which
So
is
the Kindle is specifically an Amazon?
it's owned by Amazon.
Really? I just, for interest, I have a friend who got one. She travels all the time. And think of all the people who travel for work and trying to carry books if you're a reader. And that's why she loves it. She can put on something like 50 books at once.
So some of the
And
things,
you don't have to dust them.
yeah, you know, but all of you can appreciate the anxiety on the part of independent booksellers because they're wondering, well, you know, how do we, I mean, people want books, and we need books. We need hardcovers and paperbacks, and I think they'll always be here. I think what we're seeing is we're seeing the two beginning to kind of develop together, and there are plenty of folks who want, you know, a Kindle to walk around with, or a Nook, or a Sony e-reader. I can download books on my BlackBerry Storm. Like if I want to just check out, you know, somebody's short story or novel, what have you, I can download it on that and read it as well. And I don't think it's going the other way, hence why I feel the need to talk about this. I don't think the trend's going to die off and people are going to stop buying ebooks. I think it's going to continue going in that way. So as writers, we need to be aware that, okay, this is where the shift is kind of, you know, happening, and just being aware of it, I think, helps. The price point is key. Again, my books I've put up for $1 per book. So I've sold, you know, close to 4,000. Go ahead.
So you said that for you, your emphasis and your focus were onto building name recognition and building a readership.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make money if you sell 5,000 books at $1 and you spend 6 months doing that?
It's a great question. The royalty rate that I get is about 35%. The royalty rate I would be getting for a mass market paperback, something like sitting over here on the shelf over here, would be about 6 to 9%.
But 6 to 9% of a much higher price.
Of a higher price. But you can do the math. 35% versus 7%. $1 in contrast to a $5 paperback. It breaks down actually pretty evenly in terms of what you would be getting per unit. That said, these books are distributed all around the country, and people walk into a store, they find them, or they see them on an airport, you know, book rack or what have you. So what I should say is you don't want to just do one and completely forget about the other.
Right.
They both can work, I think, in harmony together. And that royalty rate honestly, people are kind of bickering about the 35% rate. They think that that's too low, that authors should be getting a lot more than that.
Especially if you're doing a lot of the work yourself, it sounds like you're really marketing your product on the internet and spending time doing that.
That said, I've got a buddy who I saw at the World Mystery Convention about a week or two ago, and he had like 9 novels that New York Publishing had all rejected. They had just not been interested. They were very cold to him. And he finally got a book deal, I think, on his 10th novel, literally the 10th novel he wrote, and has subsequently published 6 novels with Hyperion, which is a major company owned by Disney. Their books are in the store here. And he wrote an interesting blog. I've been kind of communicating with him a lot about this over the past few months. He wrote an interesting blog this past week because he got the royalty statements for his ebooks through his major publisher, Hyperion, for the first half of the year, from January to July. And he compared that to the books that New York Publishing did not accept, that he then put up on Kindle on his own to see how well they would do. And he compared the amount of money that he was making, the royalty from his major publisher, and the royalties he was making by self-publishing his books. Now, this is one person, but it's somebody who is pretty remarkable, because my books are kind of selling about competitive with this. And what he ended up saying was he's losing money actually going through his major publisher, even getting the distribution into stores. He's actually losing money. If he would have kept all of his rights and was putting his books out on his own, he's selling at a high enough rate that if he prices the books at $2, earns 35% off of that, he would be making more money than he's making through his publisher. Now, that's a mid-list author. That's not a Nicholas Sparks or, you know, James Patterson or Danielle Steele or somebody like that. But for somebody who's living on how much money he makes year in and year out, he's actually having to consider at this point with his next novel, do I even want to go through major publishing? Even though he could do it, he's got an agent, they'd sell it like hotcakes, you know, or they'd sell it pretty easily to a publisher, I should say. He would lose money. And he's looking at the data, realizing he'd lose $10,000 or $15,000 in a year doing that.
And would he make money through the hard covers or the soft covers, the paperback covers, through that same publisher of that same novel? Or
that's a great question. He would, but he wouldn't. The point was he wouldn't be making enough money to recoup the money that he'd be losing
on the ebooks.
Right. So this is one author who's kind of a mid-list author who is doing extraordinarily well with ebooks. That said, it's kind of made me pause and think, well, I'm doing pretty doggone good with the ebooks, you know, and I want to see where it goes. I'd like to see the stores, the independent bookstores, and chain stores as well, capitalize on this and do something like what HarperCollins is presenting with the postcards, because then, you know, I could actually say, well, I've got my ebook here, you guys could all buy it, and then everybody's happy. I think we'll get there within 12 months to 24 months. There was a question all the way in the back.
Now, what were you saying were the expenses that caused him to lose money to major publisher?
Well, some of the expenses, just the printing of the books. You know, I forget whose it was, but there was a hardcover that came out a couple of weeks ago, and the retail price on these hardcovers is like, it's getting up to $28, $29. I mean, it reaches a point where even Stephen King's most enthusiastic fans are going to say, $30 or $2. You know, I'm going to try the author for $2.
Who's losing money, though? I mean, what do you mean that he's losing money?
Well, the cost of the book to produce and ship and get it into the store so that everybody breaks even, you know, from the publisher to the bookseller to the distributor to the author, the cost is just, it's getting very prohibitive.
But he would get royalties on whatever sells, right? So he would not have an expense per se, right?
Yeah, the author's not losing any money unless people start moving away from his books and his books aren't available some other way where they are buying his books.
So when you're saying that he's losing money, in what sense is he losing money? You were saying that
the guy, the Joe Conrad, the way he's losing money is he is giving his rights, the digital book rights for his books, as part of his contract to his publisher.
Okay.
And what he's recognized is that if he had kept those rights, He could self-publish them and make more money than his books are making in hardcover, paperback, and ebook through his publisher, which is just, it's really remarkable. This is one person, though, in a sea of tens of thousands of writers. That said, I'm kind of looking at the numbers myself going, well, I'm going to probably be somewhere around 5,000 books sold by the end of the year, you know, with one book, if not close to, you know, 10,000 books sold. And for a self-published book, those are pretty good numbers. And I'm recognizing, well, what would happen if we, you know, in my case, I still want to go out to the publishers because I don't have that, you know, 5 books that I've lost money on the way that he has. So I think there's still a lot to be said for that. Question in the back. Yes?
You said that you still want to go out to the publishers. And so my next question would be, having been a self-published author, do you find that they prickle? Because self-publishing has had such a, what's the word for it?
Stigma.
Stigma. Yeah.
What they really prickle at is if you've self-published a book and have only sold a few hundred copies. But if you've got a book, whether it's priced at $1 or whether it's priced at $30, that has sold 5,000 or 10,000 copies, and I think the number is really 5,000. That seems to be kind of the benchmark, that if you can say, well, I've sold 5,000 copies of my self-published book, that's what people actually take notice of. So what they actually prickle at is, or sort of shrug off, is if you say, well, I've self-published a book, and then they say, well, how many did you sell? And you say, well, I sold, like in my first couple of books, 200 books. You know, that's not making anybody any money. And publishers are all about sort of the bottom line of actually, you know, turning a profit, and they can't afford to lose money, as none of us can, you know. So that's the big thing. John?
The ebook format, now this may be a technical question, and I don't know that somebody here maybe can answer. The ebook format, can I individually put a file out there on my own web page and say, you can use this in your Kindle, or you can use this in your Sony?
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible?
You're a perfect example. You've got the book Liberty and, tell me the title again, Liberty, and Liberty and Death. You've self-published it. You own the rights to that book, presumably. You could take that file that you created to do the POD version of the book and put it up on Kindle this afternoon or tomorrow. Now, whether it'll start selling or not is a whole other thing. But what you'd need to do if you were using like Microsoft Word, if you've got a self-published book, is to save your file as an HTML file. That's an HTML file. And it's an easy thing to do in H is in Harry, T is in Tom.
Stacy, who takes care of the account?
I check mine daily, you know.
How do you get your money?
They direct deposit it.
Who do you pay to work all this stuff out?
That's a great question. Well, right now the most streamlined version of getting a book online is through Amazon, quite honestly. And they have this thing called the Digital Text Platform, DTP is what it's called, Digital Text Platform. It's very user-friendly. If you know how to check email or you know, design, if you know how to do a website, then you're totally could handle this. Digital Text Platform, and it's, the neat thing about DTP is you upload your book there, the description, the cover, all of the stuff associated with your book. It takes a few days for it to show up. Once it shows up, then people can buy the book there. You can, another nice thing about DTP is you can...
I'm in the 18th century, I'm sorry, but that's where I live.
If you spoke with Jack,
wrap my
though,
head
Jack Fryer would know how to get the book online. And if he's not already thinking about, you know, getting his books online, they probably should be. So,
what's the other thing you started to say?
Oh,
the cool thing about
the neat thing about DTP, the Digital Text Platform, is you can instantly see when somebody buys your book. So the sales show up instantly. Traditional routes of looking at royalties could be anywhere from a quarter of a year to 6 months to even a year before you actually see how many books you sold. Well, somebody, and I'll probably sell 10 books today online. I can go home at the end of the evening and click on the DTP, the Digital Text Platform link, look at my books and see how many it sold that day. And
now
so
who
it's
decides the price on these books?
the author set the price.
The author decides the price.
Or the publisher.
How how do you get the money? I mean, do you say, we'll take your credit card, we'll take your, yeah.
It's a great question. I think you can have it sent via check or direct deposit. I think the first couple of months I did it as a check and didn't, recognize, okay, this is legitimate, and so just did a direct deposit. In June of this year, the first month that I did this was the hottest month. I sold nearly 2,000 books that month. So I brought home about $700, $750 for that month alone. And this was totally unanticipated. I thought, well, I'll put it up there. I'll do the same thing as the POD books have been doing. I'll probably sell a couple dozen copies. I'll get family and friends to buy it, maybe a few other folks. But what happened was it took off. And it is the single biggest breakthrough of my career. And I've recognized, okay, I want to try to do all the things that I did for those books this summer in the future. And try new things out as well. Some of the things that work really well, and I'll try to answer all questions here today, but some of the things that have led to this, and I posted about this on my website, howtopublishabook.org, the price point. If you price your book at $5, $6, $7, it's not going to do well as an ebook. It just simply won't. If you can price it as low as you possibly can, and I learned that by doing POD books. I struggled for several years with the POD books, trying to price them so that they made money for the bookstores, so that it made money for me, so that it wasn't cost prohibitive to customers. So I had some experience there where I was realizing if you price a book much over $10 as a self-published author, you're going to have a hard time moving them. And so I had these books that I had basically been giving away anyways. So I said, well, I'll put it up there for, $2 the first month that I did this. And, they took off. So price point is key. Setting a price. What I've found is for a self-published author, anything under $2, it gets you into the ballpark where you can actually get people to give it a shot. Much over $2, I have seen very few self-published authors who have priced their books much over $2 that have been doing well. Other traditional things, or sort of traditionally related things, book cover design. Having a good-looking book cover. I've sold, like I said, if you compare Claws to the Colorado Sequence, I've sold 2,500 copies of the Colorado Sequence, 1,500 copies of Claws. To me, it's just fascinating because I'm learning all kinds of marketing things by doing this. I've sold 1,000 more copies of the Colorado Sequence than Claws. Yet the Colorado Sequence, when I shopped it around to publishers and agents, it got rejected by 450 literary agents. Everybody in the business said, this won't sell, it's not interesting, blah, 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 blah. Claws, on the other hand, I shopped around. I actually got an agent for Claws. She then took it and sold, or tried to sell it to Random House, Simon & Schuster, everybody in New York. And we got feedback from all the major publishers. So conventional wisdom, although nobody ended up buying the book rights, I should say, but conventional wisdom would say, well, the book that got some interest would be the one you'd think would sell a lot better. But it hasn't. And I mean, I've done the exact same things for these books. And so what I'm learning is, oh, the book cover makes a big difference. The kind of book that it is, the Colorado Sequence is more of an action thriller, sort of in the Clive Cussler, James Rollins tradition. Claws is a little bit darker, suspense fiction. And so cover design is huge, and the kind of book that you've got.
Can you talk about your covers, those two covers?
I wish I had copies of them with me here. The cover for the Colorado Sequence is done, the central image is this key. The background has this sort of ancient script text on a wall.
How did you get that done?
I have a graphic designer friend. That's a great question. Yeah, if you're looking to self-publish a book and you want to get a nice cover, you need to look towards friends or other writers who might have connections. The friend that I use, her name is Mimosa Mallarney, which is she's got her own website, mimosamallarney.com. She was a BFA graduate from East Carolina that I met when I was in school there. So finding somebody who knows a little bit about how to do graphic design is really key. So book cover design, price point, book cover design. Third thing that I've seen that leads to sales are reviews. If you can get people writing reviews, and they don't necessarily have to be positive reviews, which I was very concerned about at first, because I got some negative ones. I got some folks who said, this is terrible, I don't like this novel, it's just horrible, it's not written well, blah, blah, blah. And the first couple of those that I got, it kind of hurts a little bit.
Hurts a lot, that's your child.
It is sort of your baby. But I recognize as long as they're not all negative, if there's a good balance, that's actually interesting and it creates more interest. I think if they're all negative, you're going to have a hard time doing anything. But if there's a balance of 4 or 5 that are kind of negative, and then 4 or 5 that are really good, and then 10 or 15 that are sort of in the middle, that'll create reader interest. So reviews lead to sales.
How generate reviews?
You get people to buy the book. But there are other things. Like when I first put out Claws earlier this summer, the first thing that I did was I did all the bookstore stuff, like coming down here to Wilmington and selling the book and talking with you guys, doing it in Raleigh. And I did things like I sent out an email that said I will give away, I think it was like 20 copies or 10 copies to the first 10 people who respond and say they'll write a review online. And so I gave away copies at first to get people to write reviews. And at that time I had no idea I was going to be doing all this stuff with ebooks. I was still doing the POD books, which I'll continue to do. It's a part of the whole total package. But that was one way that I was able to get some reviews early on.
Did you send out any advanced review copies to newspapers, other reviewers?
I did, not to newspapers. I did send out advanced copies for Claws to several better-known authors that I've gotten to know at writers' conferences like the North Carolina Writers Network and the Mystery Writers Convention, and got blurbs. And that's another point that I have on here that's really important as well, is getting book cover blurbs from prominent authors if you can. If you can't get them from prominent authors, get them from local friends or something that actually says, this novel is great, I recommend it. So blurbs are a big part of it.
How do you contact those prominent authors, and do you get them like in the same kind of genre as yours?
I try to, and that's gotten a little bit more honed over the years. The first couple of times that I put out a POD book, I would just send it out to anybody, and sometimes I would get sort of strange people to write blurbs for the book, given that it was maybe a young adult novel and it's somebody who had written dark suspense or something. And a lot of it is just meeting people. You know authors. You've been to the North Carolina Writers Network. You've networked enough. You know a few people that you could ask. I'd be happy to write a blurb for your book. And you could probably get a lot better known people than me to do it as well. So that's, that's a big part of it, is just kind of networking, doing what you're doing here today. Trying to go to bigger conferences like the North Carolina Writers Network Conference. And introducing yourself. If you like Ron Rash's work, shake his hand and say, I loved your book. It was one of the best books that I read this past year, or what have you. You never know where that can lead you. It might lead to getting a blurb on down the road, or an interview, or what have you. Other things that work well, I mentioned this here before, but the book trailers. I'm sure everybody's heard of doing book trailers. I did a book trailer for Claws, which was basically, there's a way that you can download footage and videos from YouTube for free, which I don't even know how to do it, but there's a way to do it where you can download, and you could look up online, Google download YouTube videos. I downloaded a video that was a long, like 2-minute long, 3-minute long video, which was this documentary footage of a mountain lion documentary, but in this particular clip, this guy got pounced on by a mountain lion, right? So I downloaded the video and then edited it. I have some tech savvy with editing video, and edited it in Final Cut Pro to where it was just the section where the guy gets jumped on by the mountain lion. And then I added like sounds of growling and snarling into the background, all this sort of stuff. And at the end of the little 22-second clip, my book cover comes up for Claws, which is a mountain lion version of Jaws, essentially set in the desert. That video on YouTube has gotten close to 360,000 views since doing this 9 months ago. So well over 250,000 people have viewed it. There's a little ad at the end of it that says you can buy the book at such and such a place. I don't know how many direct sales came from that, but all of this stuff working together creates, you know, an awareness, I think. Question in the back, yeah.
Did you run into any copyright issues with it?
It's a great question. I did not with YouTube. I think the video that I actually downloaded was a copy of a video to begin with. What I have been cautious about, I actually got contacted by the Discovery Network. Some producer, and this tells you about how they get their content, went to YouTube and did a search for mountain lion or what have you, found this video which was at the top of the search engine, and then contacted me because she wanted to use the clip on the Discovery Network. Now that one I said, I don't own the rights to this. You're going to want to have to dig a little bit more and look at the other 50 videos.
Only if it goes underneath.
So for something like that, if I would have told her that I own the rights to it and then tried to sell it to her for a couple $1,000, then yeah, that would be, in my own mind, that would be a little bit.
And of course, you ended the discussion with this Discovery person by saying, buy my book.
Yeah, no, what I did was I said, I'd be happy to be interviewed for your show since it's on mountain lions, because I got a mountain lion thriller. And she was like, well, I'll take that into consideration. But what I really want is the video of this guy getting attacked by the mountain lion. So,
what's the search term for that?
If you do a search for mountain lion attacks man, and what I realized was that lion attacks man is something that a lot of people search for as well. And it's not graphic. It's kind of it's actually a juvenile mountain lion. It just jumps on this guy's back. But
there's no mention of bones.
No. But there's the screenshot or the image of the actual thing when somebody posts it on a website is of this mountain lion pouncing on the guy's back, which was different than the footage that I had downloaded, which was the big long trailer, and it happened to be the screenshot was somewhere in between. And what I'm realizing is having that screenshot of the mountain lion literally leaping onto this guy's back makes people want to watch it.
Yeah.
We like seeing the traffic, the traffic jam or the traffic accident.
Did you ever read how many hits were when the tiger attacked Roy in Las Vegas?
I can only imagine.
That was hit so many times that basically they had to start charging for it.
Yeah, and that's one that was probably pretty graphic. This one it's very tame. And I think it's again, I can't point to anything that says somebody bought the book because they watched this. There's no data to support that whatsoever. But I do know that over 250,000 people have viewed it, and all of this kind of works together. And if somebody sees it, maybe they go there and check it out. Maybe they come back a month later and buy it. The point is, if you're putting a lot of content that's cohesive out there, people will end up buying books.
So yours is just now yet another thing you can look up on YouTube. It's basically just your own YouTube clip, but it trailers your book.
Yes.
So people look up mountain lion, they get it as one of all the billions of YouTube videos.
Yes.
But yours happens to pop up with your book reference as well as
it has the book reference and the book cover image.
And how to buy it. Yeah.
And there's a key word, most of you probably heard viral. If a video goes viral, that means that people are taking it and putting it up on their websites, on their blogs. And for a video to get to those kinds of numbers, it has to become viral. This is 250,000 people, 350,000 people. I don't know that many people. I can't send it out to that many people to get that many views. So what has to happen is you've got to have a video like the Balloon Boy thing, that everybody's watching for a few weeks. And if you've got the footage, for that, it'll become viral. And you guys are savvy enough to know this. It's stuff that's kind of shocking or funny or well-made. If you've got that kind of footage, it'll do well. I wouldn't waste a lot of time on that because I haven't seen any direct evidence that says that I've sold books as a result of that. But if you're figuring percentages, maybe 1% of the people who have watched it have bought it, or 0.1%. And even if it's that's 300 books sold, So the book trailers, having a website or blog, that's a little bit more tame. Everybody in here can have a website or a blog. How many folks actually have a blog or website, real quick? Most of us. It's like a business card is what I found in this day and age. Having a blog or a website is a business card that you can then show to somebody. Somebody can come and check it out. They can see what you're all about, what your background is, what your books are. Are there questions about how to do websites or blogs or anything like that?
Yeah, how do you?
Thank you.
I use, for my website, I have a website, stacycochran.com and howtopublishabook.org, and I use register.com for that, and that is a paid service. I spend about $100 a year to maintain both of those.
Register.com?
Register.com. And they have software tools that are very user-friendly, that can walk you through the steps of doing a very basic website, nothing, you know, super fancy. Blogs, you can use Blogger, you know, a lot of folks use that. A lot of this stuff is put into Facebook now, social media sites as well, like MySpace, you can blog there. I do all the blogging that I do. Well, WordPress is another one. I've got a blog that I try to maintain on WordPress as well, online, bookreview.org. One thing to consider with blogs and websites is getting the search terms for your site to match something that people are looking for. You know, and I've mentioned this before, you know, not a whole lot of people are searching Google for Stacy Cochran. Maybe my mom and a couple of other people, but not many. For how to publish a book, though, you know, I get a fair amount of traffic for that, and the website is all designed around that phrase, how to publish a book.
How did you call that? Getting what to match?
The name of the site and the content on the site to match what people are looking for. And the big catchphrase is search engine optimization, SEO. And if you've got a book on, you know, historical fiction and you design a website around the American Revolution or what have you, if you're really savvy about it, you can design a website for content that people would be looking for. Anyways, they might search, you know, the American Revolution or what have you, and then if your site ranks high enough, then people will find it that way. There's a question in the back.
What can you tell me about Book World, UOKWHI?
I don't know much about Book World.
It's a marketing service that you pay for. They design websites and so on.
I don't know much about them. I've gotten to the point personally where I kind of, anything that somebody wants money from me for, I'm very skeptical of, particularly online stuff.
It's got a Better Business Bureau rating of B+.
Well, there you go. They've got a rating. You know, yeah, use your best judgment. Check background sources like the Better Business Bureau to see.
So does it mean that register.com is free?
No, register.com. Like I said, I spend about $100 a year to maintain the Stacy Cochran website and the How to Publish a Book website. So that is an expense, but that's one that I've been using for a number of years, and I actually make money from the How to Publish a Book site, so I recoup the money that I spend on the site.
Do you actually work that website yourself? Can you upload things yourself to it?
Yeah, I sure can. And it's very user friendly. They have a software tool that you can use to upload content online.
I'm gonna check that out.
It's been helpful with the How to Publish a Book site. I use things, I don't want to go too far off on a tangent here, but I use Google Ads to create a little bit of revenue that way.
I'm doing that and it's bombing. Tell me the secret.
Well, the big thing is actually having content that people are looking for, like how to publish a book. They come to the site and there's a Google ad. For a long time I wrote on the site that this is a sponsored ad. And that was kind of hint, hint, click on the ad and we make money from doing this if you enjoy the content here. And I was making not a lot of money with that. It was about $100 to $150 a month when I was really kind of pushing it.
Selling your book, you mean?
No, the ad space. People were clicking on the ads on the website, going to, you know, iUniverse or whoever was sponsoring the ad. And I get a cut of that money from Google ads.
Oh, you're talking about cost per click with Google.
Yeah, I'm talking about cost. I must be talking about something
Oh.
different.
Yeah, what I have on...
I have an ad and I pay each per click. They go to my website and you have like 600 keywords or something.
But you're paying money for that, so that they come to you.
I'm paying so much per click, and some are more than others, depending on what page they put it on. and what position it has.
Yeah, I haven't used that in that direction. What I use is the other direction, so that when people come to the How to Publish a Book site, they see the ad for how to publish a book on there, and then they go to whatever site is sponsoring the ad, and I actually get money doing that.
How do you get those ads?
I'd search Google ads, and it took a lot of sort of banging my head against the wall to figure out how to do it, how to get the right size banner on there, and
Affiliate programs.
yeah, stuff like that.
How much do you generate?
Yeah, when I was pushing it hard on the site, I was making anywhere between $100 and $200 a month, which was more than enough money to make back the expense of having the site in the first place, which was really all I really wanted to do with it. So I think last year I made somewhere around $1,000, a little over $1,000 with the How to Publish a Book site for the year. You know, so it's not a huge amount of money. What I found is, as a writer, particularly as a starting out writer, you make money from a lot of different places, you know, and it all sort of adds up. So yeah, Google Ads. The thing that I mentioned the last time I was down here that worked really well this summer was a blog tour. I did a blog tour this summer for Claws. How many folks are familiar with the term blog tour? Anybody? A couple people. Well, a blog tour it's essentially what it is you're visiting somebody's blog in some sort of official capacity where you write about your book or your blog in the hopes of people finding interest in it or coming to your website or your blog. And so what I did was in like April or May of this year, I contacted, you know, a couple of dozen people that I knew who had blogs, including a lot of folks from this group and from the Raleigh group as well, and said, you know, I've got this new novel coming out, Claws, and I'm trying to put together a blog tour, and I wonder if I can guest post at your blog to talk about the book, to talk about book marketing or what have you. And I got I think it was about 35 or 40 responses ultimately at the end of this. And so I spanned the blog tour out over a month and a half, 45 days. And so for every day that I had a host site, what I'd have to do is I'd send them the text of my guest blog post. There'd be a link to the book or what have you. And that was the thing that ended up leading to all this other stuff this summer. I think just by having to sit my butt in a chair and write every day for a guest post, and some of these writers that were hosting me were big New York Times best-selling authors, some of them were locally self-published authors, and I was not very discriminatory towards who would host me. I just wanted to get something, you know, online for a day, and that given day. And so it was a very cost-effective tool. I didn't actually have to travel from city to city to do events, spend gas, the time to do that. And it was a matter of just typing up a post, and maybe 10 people would see it, maybe a couple hundred people would see it. And I think that led to a lot of the early momentum for the book. It led